This is the Bat Flip Podcast. Now here's your host, Damian, David, and Matt.
Hey everybody, and welcome into another season preview episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. I'm Matt here today with David, and in this one we are going to talk about the Seattle Mariners. So the Seattle Mariners are very interesting here. They've had a couple of good seasons in a row. Obviously, they broke their playoff drought finally in 2023. They got over the hump. They had not made the playoffs in 22 years at that point. And then in 2024, they still had a good season. They had a good record, but the offense just kind of let them down just enough to where they couldn't sneak into the last wild card spot in the playoffs. They missed it by just a couple games. So definitely a team that's an interesting situation. As a whole, their franchise has been hesitant to spend money is probably the kind way to say it. They've got this core group of a couple of really good position players to really carry the offense, and then an elite pitching staff over the last couple of years, and they just haven't really done a lot to supplement that. So we will see what they decide to do this year and if they're able to get over the hump. I know this division probably got a little bit weaker. The Astros have had their stranglehold on it for a long time. The Astros probably aren't quite as good. The Rangers are probably going to be better than last year. They've gotten some pieces back. So, but David, what do you think about the state of the Mariners franchise as a whole?
Yeah, the Mariners are kind of an adventurous team. They have been for their entire history. This season is going to follow along in the latest adventure, which is the GM wants to win 54% of his games and sneak into the playoffs. And this seems like a team built exactly to do that, to a T. They have effectively done nothing. We'll get into it, but they won 85 games last year. It's like it's 54% winning percentage. They're going to go out and try to do it again and hope that it works better this time, which, again, it's not the strategy I would recommend, especially for a team with such a good pitching staff. But that is Jerry Dipoto's strategy. And who are we to question Jerry Dipoto?
Yep, Mr. Trade himself. So I guess we can move on and talk about what they did this offseason here. And, it wasn't an absolute ton.
Putting it
to say the
nicely.
least. They added Donovan Solano. I think he was with the Padres last year. Yep. I mean, not a ton there. Seth Martinez. They got him off of waivers, it looks like. Miles Mastrobuoni, who hopefully faces Brad Hand at some point. He's the third guy here. He was on waivers. Neftali Feliz, looked like he was going to be an elite closer like 15 years ago. He's here. Shintaro Fujinami's kind of interesting still to me. Like, he's kind of an enigma. He has all this, he throws super hard. He's got the stuff, and he just gets shelled, and I don't understand why. So we'll see. Maybe he can figure it out. They brought in Drew Pomeranz, another blast from the past move there.
Yep.
I'm shocked that he's actually healthy enough to be here. And they brought in Trevor Gott, who I believe was cast away by the Mets last year. So not a lot of big moves here.
No, this is I was scrounging to find names. You'll note, if you guys have been following along on our journey through all the teams this year, I didn't even put Miles Mastrobuoni on the Cubs list of subtractions.
Yeah.
Because I didn't view him as a necessary enough subtraction. But he's the third addition I could find. Like, this Mariners team did nothing this offseason. Their biggest move was re-signing Jorge Polanco. And that's not for a lack of trying. They were in trade rumors all off season long with Luis Castillo, Brian Wu, moving a starter for some, they floated trading Randy Arozarena for a little bit. Just a ton of very odd potential moves that probably would have helped, right? Dealing from a strength to address a weakness. That's certainly something they could have considered. And ultimately they did nothing. And, we have literally nothing to talk about. Like you said, Shintaro Fujinami was interesting in this group. Like, there is just nothing here.
Yeah, there really isn't. It's a tough off season for this team. You look at their subtractions; they didn't lose an awful lot. Josh Rojas was okay. Yeah. Justin Turner, they brought him in at the deadline. He kind of is what he is at this point. He's going to help a contender, but I don't know that there was a spot for him here. Yimi Garcia, that's a pretty good loss. He's a good reliever.
Mhm.
Luis Urias, JT Chargois, another reliever there. I don't think that these subtractions really hurt them that much, so they're going to largely be the same team as last year. Did any of these stand out to you, David, that might hurt a little bit?
Justin Turner's pretty good.
Yeah.
Still, I think he's going to join the Cubs and probably play pretty well in terms of a right-handed platoon. But I as a
Yeah.
as a help for this Mariners team where he was not very comfortable in Seattle and he only really figured it out well down the stretch by the time he was finally used to the ballpark and everything. That's when he was at his best last season, which encourages me for the next year. But I think they can easily replace that production.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we can move on and talk about the guys they do have this year, and we'll start off with the bats. Randy Rosarena in left field, good player. I don't know if he's gonna ever hit that ceiling of like elite player or all-star caliber player that we thought he was going to at one point, but still a good player, solid in this lineup. Julio Rodríguez is obviously the guy that makes it happen. They're in center field. He probably needs a little bit of a bounce back this year. He was good last year. Not quite the same guy as he was in his first 2 years. In fact, his WRC plus has dropped every single year he's been in the big leagues. So we'll see if he's able to figure it out. I think that the plate discipline has gotten to be a little bit of a problem. It hasn't ever progressed. We'll see if he's able to figure that out. But, obviously you add in the power, you add in the stolen bases, you add in the defense. I mean, he's an all-around player, and he's very, very good. He's projected 6 WAR. I don't know if I trust that fully, but he's a very, very talented player.
Mm-hmm.
You look in right field. This was a really good pickup. This is one of those Jerry DiPoto moves that he makes so many moves. One of them's bound to work out at some point, right? And Victor Robles was cast aside by the Nationals. He was left for dead, gone. And then he came over and he did really well for the Mariners last year and signed an extension. He's back. Very good defensive center fielder. He always has been. The bat's always been the question mark with him. But, he showed some signs of improvement last year that seemed to be fairly legit after moving over here. So we'll see if he's able to keep that going. He had a 141 WRC plus last year on the season, and he had a 154 after coming over to the Mariners. So very impressive there. Put up 3.2 WAR with the Mariners last year in 77 games. I mean, that's a huge pace. So it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. They brought back Jorge Polanco to play third. I don't know about that one. He really struggled last year. He did get better in the second half. Maybe he'll figure it out. JP Crawford is a pretty solid shortstop. Not an elite defender, not a terrible defender at the plate, not an elite guy at the plate, not a terrible guy at the plate. He's just kind of decent at everything, and that adds up to being, a solid major league regular at shortstop. Dylan Moore at second. I mean, not a ton there. He's all right. He's got some pop. They got Rayleigh at first. Luke Rayleigh kind of has had some good years before the Rays. Probably more of a platoon guy there. Mitch Haniger at DH is probably washed. We'll see. He's dealt with so many injuries in his career. If he's healthy this year, maybe he has a half decent season. And then behind the plate, you got Cal Raleigh, who his projection is huge here. He's not going to hit for much average, and his own base is going to be okay because his average is going to be really low. He's going to walk some, but he does hit for power, and he's excellent behind the plate defensively. So definitely somebody to add in there. And I think David as a whole, this unit they're very good defensively as a whole. I think. I mean, for the most part, especially in the outfield there. Where do you think the offense comes from here, other than Julio Rodríguez and maybe Cal Raleigh? Do you think any of these other guys are gonna really step up and play the part?
I'll give some praise. Obviously, you praised for Robles. I won't step on that at all. I think you articulated Robles very well. I'll give some praise to Luke Rayleigh. That's a guy that really is a Statcast darling. One of those guys that just hits the piss out of the ball. Even lefty righty doesn't really matter for him. I think if he gets this opportunity to kind of play first base for a sizable chunk of the season, and against all handedness, he can really cement himself as a good option. But it's not a preferred option. It's one of those where I'd feel a whole lot better if Rayleigh was maybe the DH slot and they had put somebody else here at first base. And if you're following along, right, you heard the Padres one last time we talked about it. First base seemed to be this kind of hole where the Padres didn't do anything. The Mariners didn't do anything at first base either, when it felt really, really clear that if you just added a first baseman with some big thump, and the big obvious one on the market this offseason was Pete Alonso, but even Anthony Santander would have helped here. Just somebody that you could have slotted in at first, slid Rayleigh to DH where he could just focus on hitting, and then Haniger can play that fourth outfield role. From the bench, you feel a lot better about that. And, maybe Mitch Garver slots in against the lefties there at first, and ultimately you get some production there. But Garver was just terrible last year, and Haniger was bad last year. It's just, you're trusting a lot of guys in this lineup to go from, what they were last year, which was not good, to changing absolutely nothing about them, but then hoping that they're good this year. It's not the look you really would want to have going into a fresh season where you're hoping to contend with a playoff caliber rotation and maybe a couple of MVP candidates at center field and catcher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to point out here that the bench is pretty good. Mitch Garver, they signed him to the few guys they have signed or traded for that were pretty good. That were on contracts, big contracts, haven't panned out. That's been part of their problem too. But Mitch Garver is one of those. He didn't have a great year last year, but he's still got some. There's things to like about him. Donovan Solano on the bench as well. He's a longtime utility guy. Dylan Moore and Ryan Bliss are both. Dylan Moore's listed on the bench on Fangraphs. We'll see which one ends up starting. Ryan Bliss is a lot younger. We'll see if he's able to, which one takes over there. I would assume they probably both play a bit. And then Dominic Canzoni has I guess, I don't know. He's projected for a 108 WRC plus. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know. He's not projected to play very much, but we'll see what happens there. So one thing to note with the Mariners that we haven't really touched on yet is that their farm system is still really, really, really good. They since they haven't really spent on a lot of high end free agents, they haven't lost draft picks. They've picked really well with those draft picks. So they have a lot of good position player prospects here. Harry Ford, very, very good catching prospect. And he's close to the big league ready. Michael Arroyo is a good prospect. You've got Cole Young and Colt Emerson, both top 100 prospects here. Both very, very good, very, very high end. Cole Young should be up fairly soon. He could be a factor at second base maybe this year. You got Montez and Pete as well. I mean, this farm system is still really good. They got several top 100 guys, and I mean that definitely adds a little bit of depth here, and it's probably a good thing for this franchise right now.
Yeah, it really is. The farm is loaded too. I didn't even have room to put Johnny Farmello. He's back in top 100 as well. First round pick from a couple years ago. Yep. I really like Colt Emerson, homered off of Kate Horton the other day. I really like Lazaro Montes. If Harry Ford can figure out the whole catching thing, Cal Raleigh really could be a Dipoto trade victim. The issue for Ford right now is whether or not he can handle the defense. Athletically, he's got all the tools, right? And he hits pretty well. The big problem for him is, can he figure out catching? And that's really what they're taking their time with, and they have time because Cal Raleigh, I think, is in ARB2, so he's got another year, 2 years, this year and next year, still under control. But with all this, with all these prospects, they probably could also go out in the middle of the season and pick up, a position player with maybe just one of these guys, a really top end position player if some team, is selling that off. So it's good ammunition.
And I guess that they're going to have Garver be the backup catcher. I mean,
I think
we'll see what happens there. But
Fangraphs may or may not. I don't think Garver's a catcher, so one of those Solano or Canzoni probably drops down and a catcher gets added here.
Yeah, and what final thing to add on the position player side here before we move on to the pitching? This team is going to have their OPSs aren't going to be very high. This is the pitcher's park to go to. This in Comerica, and I think that that definitely hurts them. A lot of these projections, you might be projected for like a 690 OPS, but you're still projected to be an above average hitter
Right.
because of the ballpark factor. So that's something to keep in mind when evaluating this team. Is you look at the ballpark adjusted stats; they're going to be better offensively than they are on the non-ballpark adjusted stats, like just like straight up OPS or on base percentage or home runs or something. So that's definitely something to look out for with this offense this year. But I guess we can move on and talk about a brighter side here, and that would be the pitching. So pitching has definitely been the strength for this team. Logan Gilbert is where it starts this year. Had a great year last year. Just doesn't walk guys, strikes out a lot of guys. I mean, there's a lot to like about Logan Gilbert. Excellent. He's a borderline ace. I think you could say he's close. He's not in that like ace category, but he's a one of three. If you got three Logan Gilberts, you are going to be really good in the pitching staff. Luis Castillo is in here. They're listed as their number two. He's obviously been excellent for a long time now. They did sign him to a big deal after trading for him. So good on the Mariners for extending somebody. But yeah, Luis Castillo still very solid. Bryce Miller has been very good in his 2 years in the big leagues. We'll see if he's able to put up another good season. Brian Woo's a solid number 4. I mean, if Brian Woo's your number 4, you're in pretty good shape. And then they got Emerson Hancock listed here in the rotation on Fangraphs. He's been hasn't really panned out at the big league level yet. Not great, but we've got one more guy to look at here in George Kirby, and he's injured right now, but he is going to be back. And George Kirby is absolutely excellent. He literally is allergic to walks, and that is awesome. I love it. I'm here for it. He had 1.08 walks per 9 last year, coming off a season where he had 0.9 walks per 9. One of the most efficient pitchers we've seen in years. So when George Kirby returns to action here, probably in the first couple of months, he's not going to be out for a very long time. We definitely are going to feel pretty good about that. But David, I mean, I'm assuming you like this rotation as much as I do.
Oh yeah. You know, George Kirby's the guy. Yeah, Damian had been on him since his time in college.
Yeah.
You know, he's projected. The projections dropped his overall innings pitched down to 160. Still projected for 3.1 WAR, which would be slotting in kind of second in this rotation. But he's probably my choice for their ace. I really like a guy like that who's going to be not walking guys, striking guys out. I just love a George Kirby and his stuff. Gilbert's great. Woo, Woo at a you mentioned Woo at the 4. Woo's supposed to be the 5.
Yeah,
he's
excellent.
supposed to be the worst one, and that's kind of where they might have been able to consider moving Woo this offseason for offensive help. But it would have been, I'm ultimately believing that they wanted to stick with Woo longer term and maybe move Castillo for the help. But the issue is that Castillo contract is difficult to move. It's long. 3 more years for a guy who's 32 is tough to move, even if he's still effective. And I think he will be. He's been dominant ever since he was a Cincinnati Red. Bryce Miller added a splitter. Like this whole group is just they're so good. They're adding pitches. They're George Kirby's getting he's hurt to start the season, but like he's also telling the training staff that he wants to pitch anyway. Like they're very, very good and they know it. And ultimately, even if Emerson Hancock has to start a couple of games so that George Kirby can get back going, that's a very fine option. I love this rotation. If it's not the best rotation in baseball, it's like top 3.
Yeah. And that's what, to me, the best thing about this rotation is that they develop so well here and with the Mariners and their pitching, and the fact that like every year these guys have gotten better. I mean, Logan Gilbert, his first year, he really didn't hit the set the world on fire. He was fine for a rookie, but he didn't really set the world on fire. He's got better every year. George Kirby's gotten better ever since he got to the big leagues. Castillo has continued to be really good, even though he's starting to age into his 30s. I mean, Bryce Miller. I mean, nobody really expected him to do what he's done. I mean, that this rotation they do an excellent job with their development here, and I think that's something to kind of look at Emerson Hancock, look at some guys that they've graduated so many prospects. There's really not that many prospects left here. Logan Evans is a pretty good prospect that we've mentioned here, but you look at you just feel like they're going to figure it out with some of those guys, like in Logan Evans. I mean, they've brought guys that weren't top 100 guys up and have really succeeded for them too. So definitely like this pitching staff and the starting rotation. The bullpen is very interesting. I do think this is one of those teams that has a top 10 lockdown closer in Andres Munoz. I really, really like Andres Munoz. I've liked him ever since the Padres inexplicably traded him for Austin Nola. um, so that was certainly the move. But it's locking it down in the bullpen here. Gregory Santos is also excellent. I really like his stuff as a reliever. The depth here may not be the same. Part of that is injury issues. Got listed down there. Matt Brash was really breaking out as an excellent reliever last year before injury. Now, I will say he had Tommy John in May of last year, but there's a pretty good chance he's back at some point this year. He's already throwing bullpens, so I would assume he's back at some point. But last year he had a 226 FIP in 70 innings, or sorry, in 2023 before last year he was injured. So definitely a guy to look out for if he's able to come back. But David, do you think this bullpen is going to have some depth problems, or do you think this bullpen's going to be good?
I think it's going to have some depth issues. I think they need a little bit more breakout candidates. I will say I really like Gabe Spire. He's a lefty in this bullpen. He's usually pretty solid. But yeah, I mean, if you were going to make some moves, if you were Dipoto, you probably should have brought in a veteran or two to the bullpen. And that they've typically had that. They've typically had like a Ryan Stanek or somebody, at the back end of this bullpen just to kind of, usher along the kids. And they don't have that this year. And that's kind of what's missing for me, right? Is if you're sliding everybody down and you've got a veteran in there somewhere, and David Robertson's still unsigned, he would fit really, really nicely into this group. If in that 8th inning setup man role, like you just put David Robertson right there in front of Andres Munoz, David Robertson's popping, 94, 95. And then Munoz comes in there and dropping 102 on you. That's a really good look change. So I think they maybe could do, make another move here down the stretch into, but again, it's the Mariners. They just haven't spent the money other than like the Julio extension, the Luis Castillo extension. They're only seeming willing to extend their own players. They haven't been able to go out and woo those free agents, pun intended, obviously, that they need to kind of push this along because, it's unfortunate that Matt Brash is hurt, but Munoz can't carry the load all by himself.
Yeah, I will say that when you look at their guys they brought in, their non-roster invite guys, there's a few interesting ones there, and this is a team that seems to have found guys off of that type of transaction a lot in their bullpen. They do a great job with development. So I mentioned earlier Shintaro Fujinami. I mean, this feels like the team that could figure him out. I mean, it really does. Like, there's not many teams. I'm not super high on him in general, but I'm high on him as a Mariner because the Mariners figure guys like that out. You look at Drew Pomeranz, if he's healthy, I mean, he was pretty good before he got hurt, and he's been injured an absolute ton. So we'll see if he's ever able to stay healthy. But I mean, lefty coming out of here, the Mariners might figure that out. And then Trevor Gott as well has got some good stuff still at times. So I definitely think that, yes, that there's some depth issues with their bullpen we got listed, but they've got a lot of options of guys who have been good before, and the Mariners are the type that figures those types of guys out. So we'll see if they're able to do that this year. It's going to be interesting to see how this pitching staff pans out because it's got the potential to be like the best pitching staff in the league almost, but it's also there are some form of concerns. The starting rotation depth too is something I don't think we really talked about much, but once you get behind these guys, if you have any more injuries, you might be in trouble there. So guess we can move on and look at the outlook here for the Seattle Mariners. Their over-under win total is 84.5. So, David, do you think that that's going to hit the over or under there?
Yeah, that's right on what I'm expecting from this team. It feels like the same team as last year, almost to a T. And last year they won 85 games. So I will take the over, and I'll say they win 85 games. I think it's a team that's very good with upside to be better, but it's got downside to be worse. And ultimately, those teams tend to hover in that 500 mark just about all season long. And the goal of Jerry Dipoto stated 54% win percentage. It's right at 85, 86 games. Like
I wonder how much the ownership coming to Jerry Dipoto and telling him to say that had to do with it.
I mean, you don't want your GM
Yeah,
unprompted saying that.
exactly.
I think
Pretty
that's
sure that had
not
some
good.
influence.
And that's why I pick on it, because you do not want your GM saying that. The owners can say that because they're
Owners,
cheap
they're-
and bastards. But we want our GMs to be out here advocating to spend money and advocating for ownership to drop the dollars on. Because I mean, imagine this team with a Pete Alonso. Imagine this team with an Anthony Santander. I think it really changes the complexion of the entirety of the team, and it's just a little bit disappointing when you have such a strong pitching staff, right? I mean, like I said, David Robertson is still there. Go put David Robertson in this bullpen, and all of a sudden I feel very strongly that it's a good bullpen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And we'll see. Maybe they do add a David Robertson type. I mean, I would assume they probably have some flexibility to where, I mean, their payroll is not really high or anything. So if they feel like they could, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. I mean,
I'm laughing because I don't.
I mean, it's
I
like
wish
why
they didn't
not?
add anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it, but
they didn't add anybody. They didn't do anything all year.
yeah, but we'll see. I think I'm gonna take the over just because I really believe in this pitching staff. I think you're going to get a bounce back from Julio Rodríguez to a certain level. I think he's better than he played last year. He needs to get off to a good start. That's been a problem for him, has been getting off to a good start. He's gone 2-3 months into the season before he really got going. And when he got going, the Mariners start winning. But he's got to carry. They're 2 or 3 stars here have to carry this offense. I still like Randy Arozarena. I thought he just had a really down year last year, and they're going to have a full season of him. So they didn't have a full season of him last year, or Luke Raley. You mentioned liking Luke Raley some. Neither one of those guys had a full season last year. So I think I'm going to take the over on this team. The odds to make the playoffs are -110. So they are actually favored to be in the playoffs, interestingly enough. We'll see if that's able to happen. I would say it's probably 50-50 for me if that happens. Odds to win we've got a typo, but AL West, +250, and their odds to win the World Series, +2,800. Not a team that I think will win the World Series. I will say if this team has their pitching intact at the end of the season and they get in, they could be dangerous because when you have to face a pitching staff that has 4 guys who can absolutely shut you down no matter how good your offense is, I mean, that's really a place where you feel like that team could really start advancing in October some. So we'll see what happens there. But any final thoughts, David?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons I'm so disappointed that this team didn't make the extra bat splash, didn't make the extra bullpen splash, because I mean, really, there are probably 2 or 3 bats in total, but one gets you to that. Okay, I'm comfortable that this team won't just stink. If a couple, if 2 guys slump, this team just stinks offensively. If one guy, Andres Munoz, isn't good or gets hurt, this bullpen is terrible.
Yeah,
you need that extra insurance. You need that extra player. They didn't go out there and get it. But again, like you said, if this team can get to the playoffs, this could be a World Series winner. Just the rotation's so good. I mean, I'm right there with you. I think you gotta win more than 54% of your games to lock that in.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us on this one. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. We will see you on the next episode.